Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Fall Jersey. Joe Archino back here, and finally some positives for Manchester City Football Club, who, for the most part this season, have really displayed a period of inconsistency and just an overall lack of the competitive advantage against the clubs that matter in the English Premier League season. But in the Capital One Cup, they were able to walk away with their first trophy of the season. The question here is, will the Capital One Cup be Manchester City's only trophy this season? And I think when we look at the Premier League table after this weekend, you have Leicester in first with 56 points, Spurs in second with 54, Arsenal in third with 51, and then Man City right behind them with 47 points. But you look at the way that the season has gone for Manchester City, and it's one of those things where the Capital One Cup was desperately needed to try to save a surge. Manchester City is desperate for a surge to just get some life back for the Premier League season, because for the most part, when you look at the results against the clubs that matter, like Arsenal, like Tottenham Hotspur, like Leicester, have not been in Manchester City's favor. They have lost to Tottenham both times this season. They have lost to Arsenal in the first match that they played, and then against Leicester they drew and they lost. Those are not the results of a Premier League title contender, as the body of work suggests for Manchester City, but they did get a big one in the Capital One Cup. And is the Capital One Cup the biggest competition? No, it's not. Is it kind of the equivalent of what Manchester City really should be playing for? It's not. But it's a trophy, and it can help them get back on track a little bit. I still don't think that they will win the Premier League title this season. I firmly believe these clubs have shown us who they are. The consistency has been shown easily. Arsenal has not been that consistent. Again, they showed again. They beat Leicester. We start to think maybe they're starting to re-solidify themselves. Then they lose to a Manchester United who's been struggling mightily. Then we look at Leicester. They take care of business like they have done all season and get a win against Norwich. Manchester City has followed the same period of inconsistency as an Arsenal this season. Leicester, say what you will about them, but they have been the most consistent side this season. But in the Capital One Cup, it did come down to penalties, and Manchester City was victorious. Willy Caballero really being the man, crowned as the hero in this one, because he quite honestly just did a tremendous job in the penalty kick. Man City winning 3-1 on those penalty kicks. I mean, you kind of look at the order that they went with: Navas notching the first, Aguero, and then Yaya Toure getting the final nod. But really, it's one of those things where Joe Hart, is the normal guy who you would normally expect for competitions, but Caballero had kind of been the man in these competitions for the Capital One Cup, and Pellegrini sticking with him through and through. And really, that decision paid off in this match, because he was brilliant, Caballero. It's nice to be able to have a nice change of pace goalie when you have to bring him in, and certainly that's one of the advantages Manchester City has had. But really, this all correlates into the bigger question of, this is what Manchester City should be playing like all the time. They shouldn't be losing to Leicester. They shouldn't be losing to Tottenham Hotspur. They are the most talented side in the Premier League, but they don't play like it. Now, clearly, there are politics at the club. There are egos at the club. There are a lot of big money players at the club. And sometimes you think and you feel like those things get in the way of what really matters, and that is winning. But and you also have to take into account that Man City's really looking to the future with Pep Guardiola's arrival just coming. I mean, you kind of look at it. We're really in February, and before we know it, it will become the time where Pellegrini kind of wraps it up, and then the Pep Guardiola era at Manchester City starts, and that is a distraction. It really is. Players have to keep that on their mind. A lot of these players, like a Yaya Toure, don't even know if they're going to be in the Sky Blue next season. But right now, the task at hand for Man City should have always been, should have been on the prize of the Premier League title, and you just look at them right now, and they have not shown the form that it has taken. Now, one of the reasons there are reasons to be hopeful for Manchester City, and one of the biggest reasons for that has got to be Vincent Kompany's return. You could clearly see that there is a visible presence that he gives, not just with his defensive prowess on the pitch, but just with his leadership. He is the captain of this club, and for a club that struggles so mightily to play together, his presence was surely missed, being able to be out there and communicate and just give. I mean, when he was playing in the beginning of the season, don't forget, I mean, I remember the call from Arlo White so well because it was so telling. But when Vincent Kompany scored a goal in their first match, Arlo White kind of said he doesn't do it often, but when he does, it just makes it so much sweeter. And it's one of those things where everything in the first stretch of the season for Man City was perfect. I mean, I think we all kind of looked at that and we said, my goodness, who's stopping Manchester City this season? 5 wins from 5, no goals conceded, and it was all going really flawlessly until David Silva went down with an injury, and then Vincent Kompany went down with an injury, and then Sergio Aguero was hurt for a while. The injuries really halted what was a tremendous start to the season for Manchester City, and now you kind of look at them, and they're starting to have the pieces of the puzzle back together. Now, another big injury has been Kevin De Bruyne. He's now been out and will be out again for a continued period of time. But the bulk of this team, for the most part right now, is healthy. Your David Silva, who's the little magician with the ball. Your Vincent Kompany, your visible leadership and your presence on defense. And defense has surely been missed. I mean, Man City has not defended well at all without Vincent Kompany. Reasonably so. I mean, Vincent Kompany is one of the best in the world, one of the best defenders there is in world football, but clearly Nicolas Otamendi and everyone else who kind of had to pick up the slack just struggled mightily to do it. I mean, you could look at matches like Leicester, look at matches like Arsenal, look at the match like they lost to Liverpool, and you could just say, man, that is because they don't have that presence that Vincent Kompany provides. But things are starting to now look a little bit brighter for Manchester City. Now, the Capital One Cup has no impact on the Barclays Premier League. When City returns, they have to do well in this, because right now what we're seeing is who has shown the consistency is doing it the entire way. Arsenal has shown the period of inconsistency that shows up again with their loss to Man United. Leicester just gets by, but they win against Norwich. And then Tottenham just continues to steadily hold their ground, and they are now just 2 points behind Leicester City. But when Man City returns to the Premier League, they've got a match against Liverpool they're going on the road for Liverpool at Anfield. Then they have Aston Villa at home at the Etihad, and then an away game against Norwich. 2 of those are very winnable. Of course, Aston Villa, the bottom of the table, and then of course Norwich. 2 clubs that should not give Man City a lot of problems. City has struggled mightily against the clubs that are in the top 7, but not as much against the clubs who are in the lower ranking of the table. I mean, they still haven't made them all look pretty, but they have taken care of business for the most part against the lower ranked clubs. So you would think that those 3 present some interesting opportunities. At Anfield's a tough one. Last season, we saw them struggle at Anfield. It's a place historically that Manchester City does not travel well and play it. It's a difficult environment to play in. So you would have to think that one, based on the track record for Manchester City, might not hold the most promising results. But clearly there is reason to believe Manchester City's season could be reignited. But as a body of work, everything that I've seen, again, I think at this point of the season, we know who these clubs are. And to me, I don't think Manchester City will hold up any major trophies this season, not the Premier League title, and certainly not the Champions League title, but they did get 1 trophy. It was the Capital One Cup. It's not the best, but it is something. But for the club like Manchester City, with sky-high expectations and just tremendous players with absorbent amounts of money, come sky-high expectations. And when it's all said and done, I just don't think those expectations will be met. But until next time, Jersey Joe Archino here at the Sports Vault. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Archino, on Instagram, Jersey_Joe_Archino, and I'll see everybody next time.